Guys, if you're a boxing fan, you're going to know what's going on this weekend. Very, very, very big week of boxing, both in the UK and in the US. Look, I've discussed a lot of the fights in a number of separate videos, but I wanted to do a betting on boxing gambling special for this weekend. There's a number of the lines that I personally thought were very interesting, and I wanted to share with you guys. First and foremost, let's talk about the fight that is the most interesting and the most discussed from a gambling perspective. Let me rephrase that actually. It's probably not the most interesting gambling opportunity for me personally, but it is the one that I'm getting asked the most questions about. And that is, of course, Anthony Joshua versus Charles Martin. I've got these prices from oddschecker.com in the last half hour. At the time of filming, it's lunchtime on Wednesday. I don't know when I'll get around to uploading this. So I've got a few other videos I need to upload first. So the prices may change ever so slightly, but best prices available at time of filming: Anthony Joshua 2-9 on, Charles Martin 4-1. Now, what I'd say, if you've seen my prediction video, you know that I'm picking Anthony Joshua to win this fight. What I'd say is Joshua to win at 2-9. That's not at all value from my perspective. You know, I think that even though you're sensible to pick him to win, you'd be crazy to put a bet on at that price. And I believe he's 2-7 to win the fight by knockout, which doesn't really give you enough incentive to take the victory by knockout as opposed to the victory by points as opposed to the victory in general from my perspective. Charles Martin, I'm slightly disappointed by the price here at 4-1. Initially when it opened, I think you could get a bit of 5-1. Even last week, a bit of 9-2 was available. And I think clearly quite a number of the members of the public have had their 20 quids on Charles Martin at 9-2, at 5-1, and it's driven the prices down. 4-1 is the best price available, but most of the high street bookmakers are actually going 7-2 on Charles Martin. So you'd be a bit lucky to even get 4-1. Now, I'm sure shrewd punters had their money on 6 weeks ago and have got better odds, but I'm doing this video for people who are maybe still yet to decide if they're going to play or not this weekend. And for me, maybe it's psychological knowing that the price was 5-1 a week ago, but for me, 4-1 is less appealing. 4-1 says that Charles Martin has approximately a 20% chance of winning the fight. 7-2, which is what most bookmakers have, would have it somewhere between 20 and 25% of him winning the fight. And whilst I do think that there may be some discrepancy there, whilst I would give him a very slightly higher chance, certainly sub 40% chance of winning the fight, for me, faced with the possibility of getting him at 7-2, knowing it was 5-1 when the fight was announced, it's hard to really motivate myself to do that. If you shop around, if you go on the gambling exchanges on the night of the fight, you may find with the weight of public support for Anthony Joshua, you can get a bit wider to that. But for me, whilst I think a pure percentage call, you may be getting a slight bit of value betting on Charles Martin there. The 7-2 available on him doesn't strike me as quite as attractive as the 12-1 that I was able to get on Dillian Whyte before that fight, even though we know how that ended. So that one, I'll probably be sitting on the fence. If he was to drift ever so slightly on Betfair, if he was to be available at 9-2, something of that nature, I may be inclined to place a value bet just to play the odds. But for me, Anthony Joshua versus Charles Martin, at this particular moment, I will probably be sitting on the fence for, from a gambling perspective at least. George Groves, Lee Selby. At the time of filming, I haven't done videos about their fights with predictions. I will aim to do so before fight night. What I would say is they're both long odds on favourites. George Groves 1-16, Lee Selby 1-7. Neither of those prices are at all attractive to my eyes in terms of betting on the favourite. I believe you can get 2-1 on Selby to win by knockout, which is potentially interesting, but I'm not going to have a look at that yet without having studied the opponent. And my initial instinct is, as with the Joshua-Charles Martin fight, I'll be taking a rain check on betting on either of those fights, given that Groves is 1-16 or Selby is 1-7. As I say, I need to look a bit more into Eric Hunter and David Brophy. Brophy I've seen a bit of. He's available at 10-1. Yeah, that's a big price if he were to be able to pull the upset, but I don't see it at this particular stage. Conor Benn, making his debut. Nigel Benn's son, of course. A lot of people talking about his debut. He's 1 to 100 to win his fight, so you're going to have very deep pockets indeed to be playing on Conor Benn to win. Bizarrely, William Hill have gone 5 to 1 for Conor Benn to win a world title before 2025. And even Conor Benn's promoter, Eddie Hearn, admitted in an interview with one of the major YouTube channels, Radio Raheem, I think, that was a terrible value and it should be vastly longer odds. And I completely agree with him. To be honest, at this stage, I would want 5 to 1 on Conor Benn to get to British title level, let alone world title level. Yeah, we're talking about a young guy. He hasn't had any sort of fight for 2 years ago. For 2 years, an amateur record that wasn't exactly filled with Olympic gold medals. Going pro, the guy's got a good surname. The guy looks good on pads. He's a complete unknown in a professional ring. And for me, 5 to 1 is ridiculous odds on him to become a world champion. If I was pricing it, I'd be looking more at a sort of 33 to 1, 50 to 1 sort of bracket. And clearly that could change. Yeah, if he goes into pros and destroys 3 or 4 opponents, those odds could change swiftly. You have to be flexible and mobile when you're looking at odds. But from the information I have available to me right now, I think 5 to 1 is a mug's bet, as is the 1 to 100 and Conor Benn to win. I'm working my way through the card and I'm not finding too much to actually pull out as a bet that really appeals to me until I stumbled across a fight that has the potential to be one of the better fights on the bills, but is less heralded, which is Brian Rose versus Matthew Macklin. For me, this is a fight I'd really anticipate Brian Rose to win, and I think the 4 to 5 available on him to win the fight is potential value. Best prices on both guys: Brian Rose 4 to 5, Matthew Macklin 5 to 4. Brian Rose moving up from light middleweight, but Matthew Macklin's a small guy at the weight anyway, and Matthew Macklin to me looks like he's coming towards the end of his career. He looks quite shot-worn to me. He really does. He's been in hard fights and lost to opponents he should have really been beating. And Brian Rose, whilst he isn't the biggest puncher in the world, whilst he's prone to getting cut and, I know he got stopped by Carson Jones and there's doubts about him, you'd have to say at this stage he's the fresher guy. On his day, Brian Rose is a capable boxer, and I think that even at Matthew Macklin's best, Brian Rose would potentially be able to outbox him. But the Matthew Macklin in front of us today, with all his interests outside of the ring, with his gym and his managerial stuff, I got to say, for me, Brian Rose is a good bet at 4 to 5, and one that I'm inclined to have a look at, certainly. Funnily enough, though, in terms of gambling action this weekend, the value is actually, if you depart from the Matchroom card. Now, I've mentioned this on a previous video, but there are some real good value bets for me internationally. I really like Arthur Abraham to beat Ramirez, and I think Arthur Abraham should be the favourite in that fight. I actually think he should be a shade of odds on, 5 to 6, 10 to 11, something of that nature. At present, Arthur Abraham is available at 13 to 8 best price to beat Ramirez. Ramirez, I'm not going to say I've seen his entire career. I haven't watched all of his fights. What I would say is this guy is largely unproven against a real solid world champion in Arthur Abraham, who's time and time again proven that he can just about do enough to beat opponents. Abraham's a guy who's mastered his style. He's a guy who's very hard to beat. Only the real elite fighters beat him, the Froches and Wards of this world. And I've seen nothing from Ramirez to make me think he is that sort of level. Yeah, I might be wrong. It might be a big move for Abraham to depart from his Germany where he's used to fighting. But for me, I think that Arthur Abraham at 13 to 8 is real value. It actually reminds me of when Bernard Hopkins fought Tavoris Cloud, and I got a very similar price on the experienced veteran against a guy who was a largely unproven prospect on his way up. And it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if the same thing happens again in this particular fight. Arthur Abraham 13 to 8. I like that price. Finally, Tim Bradley versus Manny Pacquiao. I mean, regular viewers know my thoughts on that fight. Tim Bradley, I say a lot in boxing, momentum is so key. Bradley coming off one of the biggest wins of his career. Manny Pacquiao coming off one of the biggest losses of his career. Manny Pacquiao, he's had some bad times in the sport. He's getting older. He's not got a style that will necessarily age well, so reliant on speed, explosiveness. I think Tim Bradley will win the fight. I really do. Based on Bradley's lack of a one-punch knockout, and based on Pacquiao's experience and toughness, I do think the most likely outcome of this fight is Tim Bradley to win on points. I'd actually give Tim Bradley about a 60% chance of winning the fight, and I'd say the chance of Tim Bradley to win on points is, a good sort of 30-40%, somewhere in that realm. So if I was pricing this up, I'd have Tim Bradley about an 8-11 shot, Manny Pacquiao maybe 11-10, and I'd have Tim Bradley to win on points about a 2-1 shot, maybe a 9-4 shot. Now, I think there's immense value in this fight. For me, this is my bet of the weekend. Tim Bradley to win the fight with Sky Bet at 9-4. 2.25 to 1 on Tim Bradley simply to win the fight. This is bearing in mind Bradley won the first fight. He won it according to the judges. He won it according to my scorecard. And for me, he still caused Pacquiao some problems despite having a major injury in the second fight. So I think this is a real tight matchup, and I think Tim Bradley at 9-4 to win the fight is superb value. It's not quite as good a value, however, as the 4-1 available with Sky Bet and Ladbrokes for Tim Bradley to win the fight on points. Yeah, for me that is mega value. As I say, I'd priced at about 2-1, maybe 9-4. You're getting 4-1 on that. The bookmakers with those odds are telling you there's only a 20% chance of Tim Bradley winning this fight on points. I think that's a massive bit of value. And if I look, would I rather be on Charles Martin to beat Anthony Joshua at 4-1, or would I rather be on Tim Bradley to outpoint Manny Pacquiao at 4-1? My gut feel is that the best bet, Tim Bradley to win on points at 4-1. You're getting some good value. I'm also probably going to play Arthur Abraham, and I'm inclined to have a second look at Brian Rose at 4-5 as well. I think those are the bets of the weekend. Bradley, Rose and Abraham. I might have two plays on Bradley. I might have Bradley to win and Bradley to win on points. Arthur Abraham, I'll probably take win only. Brian Rose, I'll probably take win only. I'll do an update if anything else comes out of the woodwork, but that's what I'm feeling right now, having analysed these fights. Let me know your thoughts, guys. What angles are you looking at? Where am I right? Where am I wrong? Have I missed out on a bit of value? Let me know your thoughts. If you've enjoyed this video, leave us a comment. Please hit the thumbs up button to help me grow out the channel, and do subscribe to the channel. I'll be sure to do a post-fight video covering how I thought all these fights went, so I wouldn't want you to miss out on that. Many thanks for watching, guys.